Welcome to the Three Questions webcast series. I'm Wayne Baxter, Executive Director with One Capital Management. At One Capital Management, we develop and implement strategies for our clients which strive to grow, protect, and ultimately distribute their wealth. And we do that by offering investment wealth management services. Thank you for taking time to check us out. My clients are often referred to as cross-border clients. Now, why is that? Well, it's because they're either U.S. or Canadian residents who invest in U.S. and or Canadian dollar denominated securities like stocks, bonds, and ETFs. Our process for advising our clients includes an in-depth discovery and diagnostic analysis of their wealth management goals and objectives. For many Canadians, whether they're employee, or a business owner, relocating to the United States will open the door to a discussion about several important wealth management related topics. There are also the intangibles, including simply adjusting to day-to-day life in the United States, and for many that will mean adjusting to the American business and work culture. But for today, we're going to talk to an expert about these adjustments during this episode of the Three Questions webcast series. In the first of a two-part Three Questions webcast, we'll be reviewing the three questions Canadians should ask about America and Americans to better enable them to build more productive working relationships. Joining me is Lanie Denslow, founder and principal of Wise Intercultural Training and Resources. Lanie is a leading author, popular speaker, and trusted advisor on how culture shapes business practices and business protocol around the world. She's also an author of Worldwise, What to Know Before You Go, and co-author of Working with Americans. Both publications are internationally recognized for their practical insights regarding how culture influences business. And he's also conducted seminars for global business leaders and organizations in the United States, China, Germany, Russia, and England. Hello, Lanie. It's great to see you.
Good morning, Wayne.
Thank you for joining our webcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. We were talking before the webcast. I think the first time I ever met you, I never forget it, was I had to fly into San Jose and I needed a ride to a workshop. And who shows up at the airport? And it was even more funny is that you were the actual presenter for the actual presentation today, which was fantastic. Well, I'll never forget that. And it was great to have you. Here we are, full circle now. And I really look forward to our conversation that we're going to have today. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be fairly educational and informative. And again, this is a two-part segment. We're going to do another one. We'll take a look at it from a different perspective on today's topic. I talked about before, my practice specializes in assisting Canadians who wish to relocate from Canada to the United States. A lot of times that we talk to them about, basic wealth management discussions, cash flow needs, estate and tax planning, foreign exchange requirements. It could be a discussion about immigration, their visa issues, talk about real estate and so on. But in one case in particular last year, we were working with a client that had relocated from Toronto, Ontario to Austin, Texas. And they were interested in my thoughts about how they were going to fit into life in Texas. Now, I'm not aware, I don't know if you are, of any forecasting tools or spreadsheets that you rely on to answer that question. So I did my best, based on my experience. And that said, I'd be really curious of how you would have addressed that question if they had put that question to you about how am I going to transition from Toronto to Texas and fit in? So I want to throw that one to you and see how you would have responded.
Well, I think they were really smart and wise people to even ask the question. And as you were talking about this, I thought if I was moving from California to Texas, I'd be asking that question too about how do I fit in? So it's never easy to make a big shift. And I think it's impressive about your clients because I think Canadians and Americans both tend to think moving back and forth will be seamless and the same.
An innocuous move. It's like moving across the street.
And truthfully, I was thinking this morning, Wayne, that actually I should be asking you this question because you've made that move. So at some point today, as I answer from my American perspective of what I'd like Canadians to know and what I think would be useful for them, You might at some point want to add in, yes, Lanie, and. So let's see where we go in this discussion.
Noted.
So where would you like me to begin?
Well, I mean,
Big
really,
topic.
I mean, at the end of the day, I guess I'll go back and throw the ball back at you here. We're going to play a little bit of ping pong here. Is, that if that question was posed to you about, what should I, how would I answer that question, is what would you, if they were said to you, well, what's it going to be like for me to move to Texas? How would you pose that question? How would you address that question?
Well, I might ask them to step back and look at it at a bigger picture than just Texas first, and to try to have an idea of America as a place, and then to talk about maybe business, and then some things that are personal, and then see where that took us.
So you take it from a top-down perspective as opposed to...
Yeah, let's not just talk about cowboy hats and don't buy your cowboy boots till you get there and see
eating steak 3 days a week.
Whatever. Yeah. Details. But they were going to Austin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty broad, mixed kind of...
It's more of a diverse city than...
More diverse than if you were going to Dallas. I have friends who moved there from Walnut Creek, Silicon Valley, who love it and fit in right away. So I think that the chances that they could be welcomed in would be excellent.
And that was my actual, just so you know, that was my actual, almost to the word, comment to them as well. So that was exactly what I told them. I said, I think, given the fact that Austin's a pretty diverse city, I think you'll feel pretty comfortable there, because they were coming from Toronto, which is like ultimate melting pot of cultures in North America as far as the city goes.
They'd probably be interested in learning to speak a little bit of Spanish, and their French might not be so useful, but they'd find a lot of people who spoke English that they could understand, even amongst the Texans with their accent.
Yeah, well, so far so good. I can report back. So far they're doing okay. Although I think they were probably taken a bit back by the multiple days of 100 degree heat. You know what? Let's get right into these. Well, we can get right into these questions. The 3 questions Canadians should ask about America and Americans to better enable them to build more productive relationships. And we'll speak on working relationships. So I'm going to pose the first question to you, Lanie. What are this is obviously a good starting point. What are the key things Canadians should know about United States, the country? I mean, that's the starting point. I think it's a good place to start.
Okay. Well, we started by being happy that people recognize that there are going to be differences. So when I think about the question about the country, I think first about the physical country. We go from ocean to ocean. So we're similar to Canada in how big we are. Actually, Canada turns out is bigger than the United States, but they're number 2 in the world and we're number 4. So let's just say we're both really big countries.
Geographically speaking.
And the size of the US has had an impact on how Americans see the world and feel about the world and what they're supposed to do, which is kind of interesting. Because for those European settlers who came across the country, there was this sense of this huge expanse. And I think it's carried forward into Americans liking things that are big. People talk about Americans drive big cars, they have big houses. Canadians say Americans are loud. We just think we have big voices. They talk about the size of servings of food in America, and your friends going to Texas would have found big food. So big is important. We like big companies. We like companies that keep growing. But I want to step back before I lose this thought and go back to the geography just for a minute, because one of the things that I think is particularly interesting about the relationship between the US and Canada is that we're 50 states, 40 of them are connected in the contiguous United States, but one of them, Alaska, is actually physically connected to Canada, not to the United States.
That's right.
Which I hadn't thought about until I started looking at a map and thinking about this talk. And then we have Hawaii that sits in the Pacific Ocean, but part of us is connected to part of you or part of Canada. Let's see. So big influences the country. Our form of government is different than Canadians. So we have a president who is elected by all the people and serves as both head of state and head of government. We are big in a lot of ways, including that we have a lot of everything everywhere. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if somebody comes to me and says, I want to check out the wine country, I'm going to California, I'd have to say to them, by the way, wine's made in every one of the 50 states. So it's not so easy. But in another segment of our economy, I live in Silicon Valley, very famous for technology. But now we have Silicon Prairie in Kansas, and we have Austin that's a tech hub, and Atlanta and Denver and in the East Coast. So you can find Silicon Beach in Southern California.
That's right.
So like Canada, we're a place of a lot of variety and a richness of choices. Now we have states instead of provinces and territories. And it's important to know that although we have federal laws, each state has also its own set of laws, to say nothing of cities having their own sets of laws. So if you're coming here to set up a business, there are a lot of things to check out. You need a good wealth advisor, you need a good accountant, you need a good attorney.
Or attorneys, plural.
That too. We do not have an official language, although the reality is English is the language of the country. But if you look at the top 3 languages in the US, it's English, Spanish, and Chinese. But it isn't just 3 languages here any more than it would be in Canada. When I get my ballot to vote, I have a choice of getting my ballot in 10 languages, and that's just here in California. Useful, I'm not sure how business oriented it is, but it's important for people coming from Canada to understand that marijuana is not legal across the country. It's legal for recreational use in some parts of the country. You and I live in California. It's legal here. It's legal in Colorado and a few other states, but coming from a country where it's a legal controlled substance, one has to be cautious about that coming into the United States. Let's see, what else would I tell you? We talked about languages. We talked about the size, regional differences.
I think you pretty well covered everything I can think of right now. I think
for a good intro to what might be different.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think you really covered it, and you asked me to throw my 2 cents worth in on this in terms of looking from south to north, is that the vastness of the country, but then you have to understand that each region has their own characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's the first thing that I come to realize. Canada does too, to certain degrees. There's definitely remember when I was a kid growing up, the greater Toronto area was kind of the economic hub of the country. And Ontario is the largest province. And there's a lot of ROC talk, which in other words, ROC is short for rest of Canada. And Canadian view of especially the greater Toronto area I remember I lived in Alberta for a few years, and their view of the East was slightly different. And then regionally, BC, British Columbia, the same thing. And you have the Maritime provinces, which is where I was raised. Their view of Eastern Canada, Quebec, and the West was also different. So there is some regional, I don't want to call them disparities, but just different sort of cultural points of view from a regional perspective. And then we see that in the US as well. I think it's safe to say, not just blue and red, but just from region to region. There's an observation that I had that, and you should be mindful of that when you're moving here, as to like moving to California. To go back to the discussion before, moving to California is culturally going to be a different experience than, say, moving to Texas, as an example.
Or to New York. New Yorkers think we in California are very slow moving. And we in California think those New Yorkers are just too wound up and always on. So yes, it's 100% language. And actually the sound of the English spoken varies from region to region. And I have to remind myself that when I'm in Atlanta or Austin with those wonderful Southern accents, y'all come, that in my mind, on some level, it equates with being slow. And those people are not slow. They just have a different rhythm to how they speak. So regional.
But I will say, and I will, to that note though, I will say this, my personal experience, and you can have varying opinions, but you can't really argue with experience. So my
Right.
personal experience has been that I have found, in general, whether I go to California, Texas, New York, Midwest, I find Americans, generally speaking, very friendly people, very welcoming people. I have never had a negative experience, whether it's been in New York City, in Columbus, Ohio, in Dallas, Texas, anywhere in Southern California, Northern California. I have always felt welcomed, and the fact that I was a Canadian may have something to do with that, but I have not had a negative experience anywhere I've been. In the places that I've been, I'm just thought of a few, but that have never felt as a Canadian to be unwelcomed, either on a personal level or from a business perspective either.
You make my heart happy. You make my heart happy.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
Yeah, I have it's been a great experience, quite frankly. Okay, so let's move on to our second question. I think we did a good job of addressing that. You gave a great overview. Well done. So now let's talk about it, really nail down into work culture here. And so I'm going to throw this question at you, Lanie. What do some American business people wish Canadians knew about them?
Okay, I want to answer that in two ways, because there are a couple of things that are part of business that are different. And whether you're an employer, going to be an employer here, or an employee, they're practical things that I think we need to highlight. And then we'll talk about more the personal relationship, cultural side of it. So practically speaking, US does not have mandated government supplied medical insurance. That's a big issue here. It's all private paid for insurance. Most people get their insurance through the company they work for. So it's important to understand, if you're going to be an employee, what those benefits are. And if you're an employer, what you need to offer, what the rules are. There are a lot of consultants here in the States, and Wayne and I know some of them, who can help with either side of that. But that's an important distinction for people to understand as they're coming into the, and people will be unhappy maybe to learn that there are no mandated vacation times here in the United States, unlike Canada. So if you're moving here, that can be quite a surprise, because companies don't have to offer you vacation. Now, practically speaking, most companies offer vacation, but what they offer varies significantly.
It's not mandated, but it's something that's obviously especially in today's work environment. An employer isn't going to get very far if they don't offer the perks of vacation time.
Right. But it might just be a week after a year, and maybe you have to work 5 or 6 years to get 3 weeks. There also a trend that companies, especially in the tech space, have been offering paid time off. It used to be, and in some places it still is, you have a certain number of vacation days and a certain number of days you can be sick. But other companies combine it. They call it PTO, paid time off, and they tell you it's unlimited. But there is a cultural attitude within those companies that says, but don't take too much time. Don't be gone too much. So that's vacations are a touchy issues, but something to think about and to know that it varies from company to company. The same thing would be said generally for maternity or family leave or paternity leave. More limited here. And if you're coming here and you're going to start a family, it's probably something you want to check as you're looking at employers. So 3 practical things about US companies and working in them. So let's talk then about Americans. You said so wonderfully that you've always experienced Americans being friendly, but that's not what I always hear from my clients. I hear about you Americans, you say, hi, how are you? And then you never listen for an answer from me. And people find that very frustrating. And for us Americans, it's surprising because we think, hi, how are you? Is just one long greeting. We never think about it as a question. So there are little nuances that can be very difficult. Americans are often more insular, to use, I see you, not as aware and don't feel as connected to the broader world as my Canadian friends do. So that it can be hard to find international news unless you really pay attention to it.
You know what used to drive Canadians crazy? I'm funny you bring that up. So the weather. Is this hilarious little anecdote. So Canadians pay attention to the weather, especially more than they do here in California.
Right.
Like, it's part of, your regular routine. In fact, when we first moved to California, we used to watch the 10 o'clock news here locally and, to watch the weather. And a friend of mine who had moved here from Wisconsin said, yeah, I did too, for about a couple months. And I realized it was a pointless exercise because it was basically the same every day. But for Canadians, when the weather forecast, it's basically a North American weather forecast with a focus on obviously the location where the broadcast is from. It's like a regional broadcast, right? And what used to drive, and I probably still does, Canadians crazy, is that when they would watch an American weather report, they only showed the United States and Canada was blanked out. And Canadians were so offended. I'm talking generalized here, but I think I can say this. I don't know about the generation today, but I'm telling you, growing up, when I lived in Nova Scotia and I lived in Alberta or Ontario, and we would watch a weather report and say, the border doesn't stop. The world doesn't stop at the north end of the 48th parallel here, but it sure does on those American weather broadcasts.
Yep.
So to your point, yes.
Mm-hmm. So
kind of myopic view of the world.
We are very US centric as a country. And in another conversation, we can talk about some of the roots of that, but it's important to know that. We are much
I won't say, Lanie, I'll just say it. That last one is not a surprise. That one is well known, but well stated.
Okay.
Do you want to add to that?
I don't want to talk about us being so insular anymore. That's enough of that. But we have other charming traits that can be surprising.
Please reveal them to us.
One of them is, of course, our emphasis on marketing, not just for your company, but for yourself. All this idea of personal branding, tell us, and Americans, each one of us, I will own this, think that we are really special and unique people, and you should be able to tell us why your product or service is special and unique so that we would be interested in it. But it's not so much that, but this emphasis on marketing, I call it toot your own horn, like make music, tell us you're here. So that's very much part of the American way of doing business. And as a independent consultant, it's very much part of your awareness is what's your personal brand? Tell us who you are, customize your offering for us because we're each one of us very, very special and unique. That's the American. We're also one of an Italian guy that I know who's lived in the US for 30 years, but also lived in Canada, said Canadians are more European, kind of relationship focused, and Americans are very much let's do it, can do it. There's a reason that Nike's slogan, just do it, has been so popular because that's very much the American idea. And the part of it is, I could slow down for a second, huh? Part of it is that Americans are very much about, I have a feeling that I can control what I'm doing. I can be in control. I'm responsible for myself and I can do it. And there is actually another part of that that is a little more welcoming, I think, and positive. And that is, I can sum it up in a nursery rhyme we teach our children. If at first you don't succeed, try again. So it got translated in the tech world as fail fast, fail forward. This idea that failure can be a learning experience. Somebody, a Swiss woman working with entrepreneurs, said she translates it for her clients as first adventure in learning. Failure is a chance to learn and then do it again and do it better. And I think that is one of the things that's particularly attractive about the American view of the world, that failure doesn't mean you stop. It's just a chance to learn and then do it better.
And what I really admire on that note is the fact that Americans really appreciate the fact that people will take, and this is I'll use this term, a circuitous route to get from where they are to where they want to go. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be a linear from here to here to here to here. If they have to go a more circumlocucious, if you will, direction to get there, that is embraced, I think, more in the US than maybe elsewhere. And I'll include Canada in that as well.
I think that's true.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to get to the third question here.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I think we've really covered the first two very thoroughly, which I was hoping for. So the next question, the third question today on this webcast is, what are some of the day-to-day differences that may surprise Canadians about America and Americans? What would you say, if you could give me the top three, what would they be?
Okay, in the context of what we're talking about, we have 4 time zones in the continental US. They don't necessarily match with the time zones in Canada. So day to day, for people setting up meetings, you need to really take a serious look about how does the time match. In your personal and business life, you need to know that the holidays here are different than the holidays in Canada. In the US, Thanksgiving is in November. It's not in October.
That's correct.
So that's something else to take a look at. And one of my friends said,
we have a President's Day in the United States as well.
Yes, and we have the 4th of July, and the Canadians have Canada
Day. I celebrate both, by the way, just so I don't miss out on that one. But same with Thanksgiving too.
And one of my Canadian friends said, Americans don't understand about long weekends in the summer. And I had to say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Long weekends in the summer as a divine right. So a couple of practical things like that. In building relationships, we always need some small talk, but small talk here when it comes to sports. I remember that first drive with you when I picked you up at the airport. We talked a lot about hockey. I know hardly anything
Invariably, yes.
hockey, but I was fascinated by all that you knew. Now here, I can talk to you about basketball and I can talk to you about American football, but I barely know about soccer until it's World Cup time. So the sports are different. But what's interesting to me is that in baseball and in basketball, which are two really big sports here in the US, both have Canadian teams as part of their league. Both teams are in Toronto. So the National Basketball Association actually should be the International Basketball Association, to not be presumptuous that Toronto is part of the US.
It's a good one, Lanie.
And that everybody needs to understand that when you cross the border, the currency changes.
Oh boy, everybody knows that one. Hey, by the way, I want to go back to that last point. So you realize you said the National Basketball Association should be the international. Well, you could almost say the same thing with hockey, just as completely, because it has a National Hockey League, which right from the outset, by the way, had teams in both countries, right from basically the original teams. And anyway, we can go off the rails on that. So noted point there, a little nuance there. Well done.
You can tell that I don't follow hockey, even though San Jose has a team.
Yeah.
So
right now, the way they're playing, you're not missing.
You don't want to know. And then, everybody at some point goes to McDonald's, and when you cross the border, the menu changes too. So poutine is not on the menu. If that's something that is your favorite snack, you won't find it. Maybe in New Orleans, but you won't find it generally here. So those are some small, personal, everyday things to think about. No Tim Hortons. We have Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay, but by the way, there are now Tim Hortons. I was in Columbus, Ohio here a little while back. There are now Tim Hortons in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, I'm going to Columbus for donuts.
Okay, Columbus, and there, you'll also, at least I haven't been there in a while, but there used to be a Tim Hortons near Times Square. I'm not sure if it's still there, but
I stand corrected.
Oh, it's okay. It's all good.
You won't find
they're
it
not exactly as prominent as they are in Canada, that's for sure.
Right. But
this has been awesome. This is kind of what I was hoping for, honest to God.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Nothing like unscripted discussion. And this has been just tremendous. And I've always valued my conversations with you a lot. And we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to reach out to you if they have any questions. And again, they need a great speaker or a consultant, obviously, on this topic on business culture. You're the one. So we've included on when you see the finished product here, you'll notice that we've included your contact information. But
thank you.
Even with that said, for someone who's looking for your help, what is the best way for them to reach you? Like, is it by phone, by email? How is it that they should try to contact you?
So let's keep it really simple. They can call or text me. Here's my phone number, 213-249-4170. If they're on LinkedIn, they connect with me on LinkedIn. I check my LinkedIn messages, so that's an easy way for many people to connect. And you can email me. It's a little long email address, but I'll tell you what it is. It's Lanie, Lanie, at worldwiseonline.net. Why I thought that was a reasonable email address when I started this, I have no idea. But that is my email address. So I'd look forward to hearing from anybody who's watching this podcast.
So, just so you know, we're gonna post most of that and we'll be able to see it. So that's great to know. And I think almost certainly you're going to get folks wanting to reach out to you. So I guess in the big scheme of things, there's going to be more to be revealed here, because in our next 3 questions webcast, I'm going to continue this discussion here with Lanie, and We want to make sure that you check back with us, because we're going to address the next time the 3 questions Americans should ask about Canada and Canadians. I'm looking forward to that one. And the purpose here, of course, is to better enable Americans to help them build more productive working relationships with Canada and Canadians. So, Lane, I want to thank you for your time. You've been awesome, and look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you, Wayne. It's been lots of fun. I enjoyed the conversation with you too. And thank you for inviting me to participate with you.
It's been awesome. Thanks, Lanie. I look forward to bringing you the 3 questions webcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our YouTube channel. And to receive a notification of when our latest webcast has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meetwithwayne. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.